following models are gravity-free physics simulations and are not animations nor CGI graphics in the standard sense, as there are no keyframe animations present. All of the forces being used are externally applied vortexes only, and limited use of central or offset magnetic fields. There are no other internal attraction forces present in the simulation, meaning there are no gravity in there. Yeah. They are using emulated particles of specified masses in conjunction with specific externally applied forces, harmonic resonances, and emulated magnetic fields only. Everything that came from here came from just how nature would react to these vortices in relation. And this is without creating 96% imaginary material for the universe. Yeah. I mean, based on the scientific method, this should be the proper walk and should be considered. It should be being tested. I have it on my front page of my book with all of the things, how we built the simulator or the simulation. Yeah. But it was all based on Lynchpin, which is all still based on that tetrahedron. Right. And to have this prediction ability to rebuild a planet in itself, and they've never been able to do this without adding imaginary stuff. This is nothing but true physics tapped into it.
You're talking about tapping into the real God power. Now, that's what you're talking about doing, tapping into the God power. You're talking about right now we're a type 0 civilization. You skipped over type 1 and went straight to type 2 civilization, you know, on the scale that they have for civilizations that could exist in the universe. And this is more like going into type 2. So you've really jumped past type 1.
We can manipulate the environment. So that means transmutation. If you can do this to an entire planet, you can do this to any element, and every element has a prime resonant frequency by which it bonds or breaks its bonds. Those prime resonant frequencies are easily discovered, you know, through resonance. You can, through their light forms, you can easily manipulate anything, but that becomes a threat because they've built their entire world off of inefficiency.
Yes, yes. Everything is built off inefficiency. They monetize inefficiency. They monetize corrupt systems that don't function properly. Because if you have a system that doesn't function properly, at some point the system is going to break down completely, even though it wasn't working properly to begin with. And that creates the ability for them to generate another ineffective system. And we're living in a world full of ineffective systems where we're being monetized on insufficient systems that don't really provide what they're supposed to provide. They're not giving us the maximum capacity of efficiency that we should be getting.
No, they profit and monetize the expectation of loss, the expectation of falling and drowning. And they're like, we're going to save you at this point. We're going to save you at this point. But they have, and you put money into those bonds of saving, and you never get saved. They just put it off. They put off the salvation. They put off your ability for liberty, you know, when you'll be self-sufficient. They want you still at the nipple. And when you have the fundamentals, when you have the truth about you, you don't need any of that. Right. What we're able to do, I'm going to go to a screen again. Okay. Like with Lynchpins, one of the beautiful aspects is when 4 of them come together, you'll see what Tesla was talking about 3, 6, and 9. You'll see 1, 2, and then 3. Yeah. 3 of the shafts bond. Then the next one will be, you'll see 6 bond. Yeah. And they're about to make a magnetic bond. Yeah. And when I say magnetism or magnetic, I'm saying they're about to expand out. As you can see, it's expanding from the center. And now you'll see 9 come in. And when Tesla said, if mankind understood the magnificence of 3, 6, and 9, he'll have the keys to the secrets of the universe. You know, this doesn't happen by accident, and it repeats that same tetrahedral form when 4 of them come together. And then 8 of them will come to, or 4 of these will come together and still repeat the same pattern. Wow. That fractal pattern. And what's really beautiful and ties everything together, you'll see that all of them come around the tetrahedron.
Yeah. This is what sold me. This is what made me say, man, This guy figured out something that's so incredible, so dynamic. This is what should be on the mainstream news every night instead of the garbage that they've been feeding us. This is going to force science to rewrite books.
This is the fractal.
Yes.
This is for bonding. This is a magnetic bond. Let me show you how electricity behaves. Now, instead of, and you've seen this, but for the audience, instead of 4, now electricity is a higher density, always has a higher density, and it's always seeking a higher pressure condition. So instead of these bonding at the edges, they are collapsing the dodecahedron in the center and generating energy. So it's a greater density, but smaller. It's a smaller space. But this is why electricity has so much power, because now that entire center that was here before, you can see how it has been ejected and collapsed, but this still makes the form of a tetrahedron. And these will keep bonding and making other structures, predictable structures.
And this now at 5, does it have electromagnetic force?
It's all electric. It's more electrically expansive.
Gotcha.
So, and they'll keep bonding with other 5s and other 5s. And on the fringes, the 4s will balance themselves. But it's basically rebuilding the periodic table, atom for atom. And when we place these in the solar apex, it predicted entire new relationships between stars and constellations. But it also predicts where every star will occur on the galactic plane, on the celestial plane, and the ecliptic plane. And if you look at the colors going across the edges of these struts, those represent the individual atoms that make up the periodic table. With carbon or hydrogen, carbon, and silicon and cobalt being on those center places, and then on the far edges of those, you'll have on the red side, you have your lithium, beryllium, boron, and then it just expands into the next octave, I mean, it's a concise story that's predictable and proven. Like we were able to throw it in the chat GPT because now they're calling this the Howard comma. Like the Pythagorean comma. The Pythagorean comma is that portion of the periodic table. And if you watched on that Joe Rogan thing with Eric Weinstein, you'll see we were talking about the Pythagorean comma 109.47. Eric was saying that was a mistake, that I wasn't aware of. And I was like, no, you don't build 50 patents off of it with it being something you're unaware of. I was like, no, but it actually is an error correction code because it allows, instead of them having the platonic solids, and what they love to do is divide the universe or the earth into cubicles. Into cubes, and now make prediction based upon where these cubes are overlapping. Whereas this is no longer based on the cube. This is actually based on those 4 corners that we were talking about. These 4 corners right here.
This is incredible. I mean,
this is the 4 corners that existed that the Bible was talking about. The center of the earth. In order for this to exist, there's a sphere in here, a sphere in here, a sphere in here, and a sphere in here. And these 4 spheres interacting are responsible for all effects of nature. And how they respond when other things bond with them. All of these things. And this is how we developed the Lynchpin. It was like, okay, well, they're not listening to it for its predictive value. So it was like, well, let's build it out and put props into those individual areas, and we'll invent tangential flight.
Which I saw the tangential flight from you when we had our live, months ago. But can you pull that video up? Because that blew my mind. Because then I saw an application of the science. So it's one thing to have ideas, concepts, theories, but once you can see it being applied, it changes your concept and understanding of it completely.
Let's get it right here. Well, that's some of the patterns. I'm going to just pop it up here. We'll see a 4 bond of their use. Here's 4 of them coming together. And out of the vortices, we've attached now arms. But the 4 of these will now come together and lift this 50-pound barrel. and then 5 of them will come together and pick up the 5 collected barrels because of their collected thrust.
Right. This is a whole new form of flight.
Entirely new form of flight, tangential flight, the ability to fly around your own center of mass, something they've never been able to accomplish with just 6 props. But this was low-hanging fruit from the Lynchpin. I wasn't trying to build flight vehicles. I was just trying to prove, I was like, if this is the Fractal, I said we should be able to put props in those pentagonal areas and it should have tangential flight.
Right.
And the drone community hated me. They were like, how dare you hit us with something like this? And even though I made a gift for $25,000 a reward for anybody that was able to build the flight simulator with this, they were like, there were people that were saying, it's not possible to accomplish that. And within 2 weeks, we had it done.
Yeah.
By putting it out into the universe. And now these 5, so this is the end of cranes, or this will be able to greatly assist in how we do construction and lifting and bringing things home. And they're all autonomous.
This starts making you even ask questions like, could this technology have existed in the ancient past?
It had to.
Potentially help to build some of these megalithic structures.
It had to.
Yeah. Because you can lift an incredible amount of weight with this technology.
Any weight that you want.
Yeah.
And then you cut to, so those are some of the innovations that we've made in flight, but then you cut to what we've done in our propulsion systems. So this is the system and method for projectile propulsion. Now, what's interesting, instead of using any type of chemical propellant, what we've been able to do based on the geometry that we have is, you'll read it in the background. It's conventionally projectile weapons are powered by chemical potential energy that is converted into kinetic energy. For example, a conventional firearm round includes gunpowder, smokeless powder, or some other propellant that is ignited by a primer, which causes the propellant to deflagrate. Well, gases from the burning propellant becomes pressurized and expand, which push a projectile, such as a bullet or a slug, out of a firing chamber and through a bore of a gun barrel. While chemical-based projectile weapons have been the standard for hundreds of years, the small amount of propellant that can be practically placed in the small volume of the firing chamber limits the propulsive force that can be generated and therefore limits the speed at which the projectile can be fired and the distance that the projectile can be shot. Well, the summary of this disclosure, and I'll just read this first paragraph. The present disclosure describes systems and methods for projectile propulsion, where the propulsive force is applied by an electrically overloaded capacitor, which causes a portion of the capacitor to explode and generate an explosive propulsive force to propel a projectile with substantially more force and at a substantially higher speed than is achievable by conventional powder-based rounds. So we're basically able to take water and having it in a small chamber, and basically like if you were to think of an ice chest, if you were keeping ice, and you apply an electrical current, you can apply 1,000 volts through the same aperture that you can 1,000,000 volts.
Right.
And now with our geometry, that now is able to sustain that force. And since the water wants to evaporate at 1,700 times its normal volume, and it's unable to do that, now that becomes cubed. And so it immediately skips a gas state that it typically would go to, and it goes to a plasma state.
Wow.
And in that, it converts the gas state into a discharge, and it's basically lightning out of the barrel.
Gotcha.
So depending upon how much electricity you run in through one thimble of water, you can send something into space, or you can send it outside of the solar system. It's able to launch, and that's the goal, was for the Lynchpins to be launched into space.
Wow. So this would be something like riding a percussion wave. So is it something like you send the charge in and you create this expansion through this plasma, then you do it over and over again and it rides this?
Yeah, you put it on a sustained thing. But if you think about, I'll give one secret away. Okay. If you think about Victor Schauberg's example of the fluidity of how water is supposed to move, now you're able to get an internal interaction that's sustainable, and then you provide a way out.
Gotcha.
So we're able to, it's basically lightning out of the barrel. It's ray guns, you know, and then we patented it as a gun.
Yeah.
But not because we were trying to make guns. We wanted to prevent anyone else from being able to make it as a weapon.
Gotcha.
But there's nothing that can stop this.
No. The applications are almost endless. Even running a combustion engine
off of this.
Yeah.
You know, so
you can push the cylinders. You know, I mean, this is crazy.
So we're there with so many different innovations that has affected so many different fields.
Yeah.
And we have the proof, and it makes geometric sense.
Yeah.
You know, the universe gave us the ability to recognize the genetic coincidence of symmetry, so we would know that something is healthy.
Right.
So that we know that it's safe, you know, and we've lost that recognition that, okay, you know, the eyes should be around the same place, the nose should be in the right place. Right. Therefore, that means that their organs are in the right place and it'll be healthy. Well, if we have the genetic or the symmetrical similarities and the harmony associated with this that registers in our eyes, it makes sense putting it together. Now we've innovated multiple fields with it.
Yeah.
It should be explored. But when I went to the Black universities, because I was questioning 1 times 1.
Yeah, right.
I went to Morgan State and did an entire presentation.
Wow.
No one from the engineering department showed up. From the physics, from the chemical, from all that. We had to bus in students from outside to be there. And I shared these things there. But that was 5 years ago.
Yeah, wow.
And none of the Black universities. And so I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
So now, because all of this stuff is patented, I don't have to share it.
Right.
With those universities that were unwilling. But what does that do to Black people?
Yeah, it just holds us back even further. I mean, the opportunity was there. You know, sometimes we can't see the opportunity when it's standing directly in front of our face because we've been so systematically put into this mindset or this mental prison. And we want to follow the system exactly as it's been laid out for us. We've been institutionalized in that way from birth all the way through adulthood. So now here you come with the keys to the universe, and they're blind to it. It doesn't even exist in their eyesight. They can't even see it, even though you put it right in front of them.
And that's the most heartbreaking aspect of it. If I wanted to explore some of the magnetic field, and that's with the opposite of the linchpin. This is me expanding the linchpin out or the tetrine to its fullest place, and it become mirrored all shapes. But this is the magnetic field. This is predicting every particular waveform. Inside of this is a water hammer. It's a transmitter. It's a receiver. It's a
fractal of DNA almost to me. Incredible. Yeah.
We call it transcendental lighting. So what are we doing now? We don't.
I know you had